In fact, there was one officer, Harry Dunn, who was on his M4 getting ready to shoot a bunch of Trump supporters, and our guys stepped in between and de-escalated the situation, put their backs to the officer, put their hands out towards the Trump supporters, and de-escalated it.
Tell me what the situation was for you with on January 6th, and then through the court, and then we'll go through the
yeah, sure.
Here.
So Oath Keepers was there to do security that day at 2 permitted events on Capitol grounds. One was the Latinos for Trump event in Lower Senate Park, what's called Area 7. And the other one was the Ali Alexander Stop the Steal rally right outside the doors on the east side in Area 8. And that's why we were there to do security. And our guys escorted a bunch of people from the Ellipse rally in the VIP section towards the Capitol for Ali Alexander's event. And then they got swept up in the excitement of the day and walked into the Capitol 20 minutes after Congress had recessed. And when they were inside, they actually helped police. I was standing outside, didn't even go inside, but I was standing on the outside trying to locate my security teams. But of course, because we're Oath Keepers, we were targeted for, along with the Proud Boys, the worst charges of all, seditious conspiracy, which is just absurd. Our guys inside actually helped police. In fact, there was one officer, Harry Dunn, who was on his M4 getting ready to shoot a bunch of Trump supporters, and our guys stepped in between and de-escalated the situation, put their backs to the officer, put their hands out towards the Trump supporters, and de-escalated it. But on the stand, he lied, and we caught him in the lie. We caught another Capitol Police officer, Lazarus, lying, and he was caught later by Steve Baker on video, because they said they were both together. Well, later on, Steve Baker discovered that the Lazarus guy was actually under the tunnels, under the Senate. So we caught him in perjury. But that's what happened to us. And so we were railroaded through a show trial. It was all about stopping Trump from being able to run again,
sure, yeah.
disqualifying by the 14th Amendment. That's what really happened to us. So I got 18 years because I refused to turn on President Trump, refused to bitch out, which refused to take a plea deal, went to trial along with my co-defendants. So I got 18 years. Kelly Meggs, my co-defendant, got 14 years. And then on down the line, Jessica Watkins and Kenny Harrelson, I believe, were like 7 and 5 years each.
Wow.
So long story short, though, this is all a big setup to try to get Trump out of office. It's a complete dog and pony show.
Jay, what was it like for you on January 6th?
Well, I didn't do any violence.
Sure.
I was caught up in a crowd push that trapped me in there for a bit, and it appeared on video that I was pushing, but I was just trying to stand up. So, and I got out of there as soon as I could. They considered that they should charge me with assault because I touched a police shield that was handed to me, but I was just handing it back to the cops when they claimed that I was making or completing a shield wall. And they basically just turned everything I had done that day, because you're on video the entire time, the most videoed thing in human history, I guess.
Yeah.
You could see my actions the whole time, and they just characterized it as very violent or with ill intent and that type of thing. And when I was, they raided my house and then finally arrested me, and I, as Stewart said, I guess, bitched out. I did take a plea.
That wasn't what I was saying.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, not to me specifically.
I'm talking about the guys in my organization that actually lied on the stand against us. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And that is bitching out.
That's bitching out.
That is. All right. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
not you, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The prosecutors bitched out on me. They lied a bunch. But actually, when I went for sentencing, I figured I'd only get like a few months, maybe 6 months, maybe house arrest, something like that I was hoping for. But I felt like they were trying to make an example of me so that they wouldn't have other actors at rallies or something. I don't know. But they ended up, the judge ended up giving me a sentence of a year and a day in prison. And that was what really vaulted me into a larger sentence. Was one of the things was on the first page of my charging memorandum, sentencing memorandum, was a picture of me from a Halloween party 2 years prior, where I dressed up as Jacob Chansley, the QAnon Shaman, and
awesome
it was
pic.
the best costume ever.
It was awesome.
But they were like, he obviously doesn't take this seriously, and he's making fun of these proceedings, and
Right.
and then proceeded to show a video that I had shot myself on my phone of some rioters crowd surfing a big ladder into the tunnel entrance to fight police with a 2-story ladder, and I thought that was kind of funny, and made a comment about them trying to fix the light bulbs finally. And that was some hilarious joke that, of course, was very bad for for me. So I should work on my comedy a bit.
That working on your comedy is something that I want to get back to a little bit. But Jacob, you're probably the most notorious of the panel here, just because of the
Regalia.
uniform that you wore on January 6th. Why don't you go ahead and outline a little bit of your experience? My
experience was a day of unity, peace, and love. And when I made my way down to the Capitol building, in my experience, everything was fine until the police started shooting concussion grenades, tear gas, and rubber bullets into the crowd. That's when all hell broke loose. That was when the riot started, okay? So if the police were shooting tear gas at the barricades to push people back from the barricades, that would make sense. But they were shooting it into the middle of a peaceful crowd. So people are going to move forward
to get away,
to get away from the tear gas. I don't know. I mean, you're a Marine. You know tear gas sucks.
Yeah,
it is your instinct to move away from it, you know? So that was when all hell broke loose. I saw people breaking in the windows and stuff on the Senate side. I went in, they went in, they kicked the doors open, and then I saw everybody pouring in. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, this is our sacred building here. We can't have violence and vandalism and theft inside this sacred chamber. So I went inside to stop vandalism, violence, and theft. And that's exactly what I did. There's plenty of video evidence to prove that. Within 30 seconds of being in the building, I actually stopped somebody from stealing. Now, it's just muffins from a break room, but it's a principle of the matter. I did stop somebody from stealing. That was my intention when I went in the building. I also volunteered to help the police when I saw there were people in the Senate. That's why they were escorting me around the building. And I also, when I got out of the building, I was the one that played Donald Trump's tweet on my megaphone and stood in front of an angry mob trying to break into the Capitol and told everybody to go home. So there was a lot of distortion in the Mockingbird media's narrative. They chose to use me as their poster boy because my image created the illusion that the violence and the chaos that took place outside the building also took place inside, even though it didn't. You see, so it created that psyop illusion. And in that regard, what's really funny is they tried to say that when they went after me, that it was because, you know, I was dangerous or a flight risk or whatever. And then they tried to say there was no bias in their approach to this. But when I asked for my regalia back when I got out, the government didn't want to give it back because they said that the regalia, the horns, the face paint, the staff, my presence there was a quote unquote sign of strength on January 6th. And so now it makes...
Shit, you can borrow mine.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, now it all makes sense. Why they kept me in solitary, why they made me an example, why they gave me a 41-month sentence, why they put the sentencing enhancements that are unconstitutional, why, just all of it makes so much sense.
How long were you in solitary?
10.5 months.
Over the entire time?
Well, kind of. They transferred me over to Colorado for a psych eval. And what's really crazy about that, and this just goes to show that when you ask a lawyer to represent you, make sure they are going to represent you. Because when I got back from Colorado after my psych eval, my lawyer had lied to the media and told everybody that I was schizophrenic, bipolar, depressed, and delusional. None of which was in my psych eval. So, I mean, this is, and coming back full circle, this is why we need real representatives in the Congress. Because most of our congressmen, guess what? They're lawyers.
Yeah. Stewart, why don't you go ahead and take a minute to talk about what your experience was like?
Yeah, so I went to January 6th to cover it as a journalist. I was there with the media group I'm a part of called Murder in the Media, which is why we doodled that on the door, which was a big spicy moment, and then had the somewhat famous photograph of me smoking.
That word does tend to get people a little nervy, right? Especially Congress people.
It's a sarcastic name for a funny media group. We do more comedy than news. You know, we're a Telegram bunch, and we were out there covering the Trump rally before, and the footage wasn't great. There wasn't that much going on. So when things started to happen, and what you touched on is very true. There were two January 6th. There's inside the building and outside the building. And none of it would have happened if those cops did not go completely hard on a group of people who were not expecting it and not used to it. Like, this is not BLM out there. This is angry dads. And I mean, I heard the people say, "Hey, I thought you were on our side." Well, they learned today that they weren't. But that's what set this thing off. And
a lot of grandmas too.
Yeah, a lot of exactly. When as a man, when you see these grandmothers being maced and tear gassed and flashbanged, there's a certain reaction in your heart.
Yeah, push them down and run over them as
that's
they
when
leave.
The crowd shifted.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So, and then as soon as people were inside, which wasn't too difficult apparently, the mood was jovial. It was people are walking around inside the lines. When you see that video, people orderly. That's an accurate representation of what was in there. People go in, and it was more of a, well, damn, we're here. What now?
Yeah. So I'd like you all to actually comment about the dynamic that you were talking about, right? So inside, everyone, and now that you mention it, I don't recall seeing any video from inside where people were even getting rowdy. Like you hear people like talking about, oh, you know, that's a crazy riot when they're staying inside the ropes and stuff. So
There is some, but we suspect the ones that were violent inside, like for example, there was a situation. Tariq Johnson, I don't know if you saw the black officer with the Trump hat on his head, and so he recruited an Oath Keeper retired cop, Mike Nichols, on the east side to go up with him up the steps, and he gave Mike Nichols his bullhorn. And Mike Nichols said, "Oath Keeper coming through," and part of the crowd. We weren't allowed to show this to the jury, of course, but he went inside with Tariq Johnson and helped get some of the Capitol Police officers out who were all dressed in riot gear. There were some violent people inside. He suspects that those were provocateurs. There was inside job provocateurs. Very few people being very violent inside. But that was the one exception that I know of, was that incident. But once again, we were not allowed to show any of that to the jury. We're not allowed to show any footage of an Oath Keeper cop helping the police, because that doesn't fit the narrative. The narrative is we're anti-cop somehow.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War Podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.